Hai, Assalamualaikum. Good afternoon. Salam sejahtera. Uh, on behalf of Yayasan Sejahtera, I welcome everyone in this call today to our pre-conference and webinar series, a series of roundtable discussion, presentation, and panel session leading up to the International Day of Eradication of Poverty 2021 in October. So every year, Yayasan Sejahtera will have this session in October where we celebrate IDEP or IDEP in short, um, to kind of appreciate the work that we do and the work that the partners and all the organization in our ecosystem does. All right, so we have a treat for you today. But before that, let me just briefly go through what the session and today entails. So we're going to have an opening speech from our CEO, Puan Sherin Shariza binti Dato' Abdul Ghani. And then we're going to have our guest of honor to deliver his keynote, Professor Dato' Dr. Jafri Malin Abdullah from Academy Sains Negara. And then we'll head into the panel session where we'll be joined by two other speakers and moderated by the young and mercurial talent of Raudah Nazran. Never cease to amaze me. Impressive young talent there. Um, Today's topic is linking science, technology, innovation, and economics to community development. Um, we came about this topic because at Yayasan Sejahtera, designing programs, I felt like I'm getting more and more too close to the work, and that kind of hinders creativity and innovation for me a little bit. So I was thinking, what if there's another way? What if there are guidelines and tools and filters that we can use to improve and enhance our program designs? So I had a session with Professor Dr. Jafri, and he was talking about STIE, Science, Technology, Innovation, and Economics, and I felt, hey, this could be like a start or even the perfect tool to help us in community development program design, right? So moving on to introducing some of the guests, I've mentioned Professor Dato' Dr. Jafri Malin Abdullah from Academy Sains Negara, also from Academy Sains Negara and Sunway University, a late addition to the party, Professor Mahindran Nair. Uh, and then we also have Juan Dasri, Juan Zulkifli, CEO of ETIS, an equity crowdfunding platform. And I believe the first Sharia compliant equity crowdfunding platform in the country, or maybe even the world. We'll hear from Dasrik about that soon. And moderating the panel will be Rauda Nazran, CEO of Accelerate Global. All right. So without further ado, I would like to invite our CEO, Puan Sherin Shariza binti Dato' Abdul Ghani, to deliver her opening. Dipersilakan, Puan.
Thank you, Fauzul or Pau, as we informally call him. Thank you, everyone, for joining on a Saturday afternoon. It's bright and sunny, and really, we're very honored to put this together. The team have worked very hard over the past couple of weeks to put together today's session. And I will share a little bit about Yayasan Sejahtera. Permit me to use a few slides so that you can visually see the kind of work that we do. And after that we're going to hear the comments and the presentation from our esteemed keynote speakers and our panelists. I'm so excited to listen to everyone. Pau will remind you to keep the comments going in our comments, our chat group, or rather the chat box there, the Q&A. Okay, so very quickly, let me just share a little bit about what Yayasan Sejahtera is, why we were created back in 2009, and it's been close to 12 years of the work that we've been doing. We were created and incubated under Khazanah Nasional during the GLC transformation program. because we saw two very key, aspects in the country that we needed to be actively engaged in. One was education, so we created Pinta Foundation. The other one is on, income inequality, addressing poverty, and hence Yayasan Sejahtera. So since our inception, this is the impact slide that shows you the number of communities, how many people we have reached out with our programs and have benefited from the things that we've done. And income is one indicator of a success measure for us. So we've achieved a pretty healthy growth, alhamdulillah. And of course, the programs and, the length of, programs. Sorry, my internet is a bit slow, so I'm freezing. Okay, here you go. So, each of the program will run for about 24 months in terms of how we sustain the community. Next, please. So we created this graduation model only recently after the 10th anniversary. We thought about how we're going to actually look at, addressing poverty in a more sustainable way. And this graduation model is something that we looked at globally as well. There are other global agencies like ourselves or non-profits like ourselves who actually have a similar model, but it is where we start looking at the very bottom. Obviously, is equitable access to basic needs, and then we go all the way up, and our sort of goal and our vision is actually a just and inclusive society. Of course, it's not a straightforward kind of linear, beautiful model as you see on the screen. There's a lot of things that happens, and with this pandemic, from being at the fourth rung, we moved down back to the first rung. So it is a live model that continues to challenge us, that continues to keep us on our feet to really look at new solutions. So this session is actually fantastic for us to tap on the brilliant brains of the group here, and also hear from the participants who are in the audience. Next, please, very quickly. Okay, so some of the programs, we're going to share this slide in our website so you can have access to it. But these are the kind of work that we've done in terms of entrepreneurship development, micro enterprises. Next, please. And we run campaigns, of course, the COVID-19 with the relief and recovery in terms of immediate needs of food, also looking at, reconnecting them to their economic activities once it's safe. So there are phases of the work that we do, the immediate relief, and then also the sort of mid to long term. Next, please. We also were involved in the provision of equipment for students, because some of our marginalized communities have no access to internet and do not have tablets and all that to continue their online school. So we created this program to support them. Next, please. So this is a little bit, pesanan daripada penaja lah, if I can use that, right? So so that you're aware of some of the campaigns that we're running. And of course, being a non-profit, we continue to look at contributions from corporates, from individuals, and perhaps onboard our activities and programs with some of our corporate partners. Dasri and his team are looking at how to provide sustainable funding, and we look at different ways of looking at how we increase our funding base so that we can be more effective and reach more people. Next, please. That I think is the last slide. Yeah, so this is the one that is today is the inaugural sort of event that's kicking off a series of webinars that we will host with different panelists, of course, and culminating in October when we have our IDEP. So that's my bit. Thank you very much for listening. Pao, I hand over to you, and we look forward to the rest of the session. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Puan Shireen, for your opening speech and sharing of what Yayasan Sejahtera does. If anyone from the audience would like to get to know more, get a conversation going, feel free to reach out to us. We have website, sejahtera.my, and there's a general line there that you can use to reach out to us. Yeah. So without further delay, I would like to invite Professor Dato Dr. Jafri Malin Abdullah to present his keynote speech. Dipersilakan, Doktor.
Terima kasih Cik Faizul. Okay, just skip to the first slide. Nama saya Profesor Dato Dr. Jafri Malin Abdullah. I'm a fellow at the Academy of Science of Malaysia. I'm also a professor in UC Science Malaysia. I'm a brain surgeon. So what is a brain surgeon doing lost today? Talking to you about STIE. 1995, 26 years ago, as I came back from Europe to the state of Kelantan, to the hospital UC Science Malaysia, among the first of my patients was a child with a very big head. The father was a rubber tapper from Kuala Krai. He came to me holding the child and asking to treat this little girl. So here I was, trained in Europe, all the high-tech stuff, and I wanted to put a shunt in this child, a catheter to drain the excess fluid in the brain. That technology did not exist in Malaysia, and it cost 2,000 USD at that period to buy that stuff, that gadget. The father was crying, literally crying in front of me because he couldn't afford. And I cried with him. And I was hitting myself on the head because I couldn't help this poor rubber tapper's daughter with a big head. Because he has no access. So I had to go around begging social service and all that. Eventually, we managed to get the gadget to help to reduce the pressure in this child's head. But I asked myself, why is it so expensive? For things in Europe, we have insurance. In Malaysia, you have to bring out your money to buy. Why isn't anybody inventing this? So what I did, I take things into my own hand. I invented the catheter. I invented the catheter, a prototype, but no company in Malaysia wanted to develop it because it was too expensive. The population of Malaysia at that time was only 25 million people. Yang sakit tu hanya berapa ribu orang, the company will not make money. So I decided, if I cannot look into Malaysia, I will go to the most populous country in the world, India. So I went to this company called Chabra, and they made this catheter for me for 50 rupees. 50 rupees versus 2,000 USD. And I got rid of my patent. I said, I do not want patent because I want everybody to get the benefit of this invention. So now, until 2021, the catheter is being used and still being used, sold in India for 50, because only India can mass produce thousands of these catheters and keep the price low. So here we are, 26 years later, I'm sitting in front of you, in front of the camera, and here I am talking about 10 STIE drivers and what Yayasan Sejahtera should know about, what the listeners should know about. What on earth is this STIE? Apa dia STIE ni? Next slide, please. So as we see in this slide, ada X axis, Y axis. Kalau kita tengok di sebelah kiri, you see science and technology drivers. And you see on the top, which is colored blue, those are the Malaysia social economic drivers. So now bringing myself from 1995, 26 years ago, to today, here we are looking at something really, really dahsyat lah. Tengok. This is a plan from the government of Malaysia with the help of Monash University, Academy of Science Malaysia, and many other pusat-pusat bertanggungjawab. Where we see that now in 2021, till 2030, Malaysia, in its current situation, everybody knows how Malaysia is now today. I don't need to remind you, and I do not want to say bad things, but everybody knows what's going on. Here we have to move ourselves forward, by hook or by crook. Tak kisah orang kaya, orang tak kaya, orang miskin. So here is the idea of the government. And this is not the current government only. This is the government from Najib to Mahathir, Mahathir to Mahindran. That's not changed. So kita tengok daripada 5G, 6G, printer tak lama lagi, ada 5D printer, ada sensor technology, we have advanced materials, advanced intelligence system, blockchain, my favorite neurotechnology because I'm a brain surgeon and also a neuroscientist, bioscience technology, and it has to match with energy, business, financial services, culture, arts and tourism, agriculture, forestry, water and food, education, environment. So here you have a funny table. I thought, oh, okay, macam mana? When I first saw this table, I said, wow, you know, such a beautiful table to match the y-axis and the x-axis. Next slide, please. So, apa ke benda plan kerajaan ni? So kalau kita tengok, saya ambil beberapa contoh from this slide. We see sensor technology, high performance sensor including micro, electro, mechanical system, magnetic material and piezo ceramics, wearable biosensors, and printable wearable electrochemical sensors. Sounds very high-tech science to us, of course. Everything that is put here is very high-tech. So orang yang tengok slide ni, dia akan fikir, ini untuk orang kaya je. Ini bukan untuk Malaysia. But this is not for us. This is only for rich people, countries like Singapore, maybe South Korea, not for Malaysia. See the next slide. The next slide shows you the social economic drivers. It's easier to understand the social economic drivers slide than to understand the first slide. Because that first slide is all science. When kita bangun tidur kan setiap hari, we do not think science, we think arts. We open the window, we see the sunshine, we see the pokok-pokok, we see the bunga-bunga, we see the lovely people walking around. We are thinking in arts. So here, the 10 socio-economic drivers make sense. Energy, an important driver of industrial growth. The energy sector has complex and interrelated network of entities involved in the production. Kalau kau baca ni, kau pening. Aduh, you see a solar panel there. What is this? Wonderful solar panel, what does it concern with me? Do you know that in the state of Sarawak, solar panels are being used to dry food, belacan, hygienic belacan. You know how some food are made, dikeringkan. It's not very hygienic. So the Sarawak government lama dah with USM, I'm talking about USM, kena fly kat USM, saya sikit, kena puji USM sikit. Energy is being used to dry food. Free energy from the sun. Okay? Culture, arts and tourism. Now, with COVID, you can't touch it. You can only see it. You can smell it. You cannot smell it. You can lick it. Yes, maybe. So right now with technology, kalau you nak rasa laksa Sarawak, you lick your handphone. You boleh rasa lah. You kena beli the film, that is the biofilm that sticks on your handphone, and you lick under Khazanah dekat Legoland. Dia dah buat dah. I rasa lah, oh wow, okay. This is me, this is laksa, my God. This is a new way of buying stuff. So, orang jual laksa Sarawak kan, dia buat packaging kan, kita nak tahu lah laksa Sarawak sedap ke tak. Kita tak boleh. There's no lady holding a little cup dekat supermarket. You know, taste this. Tak, you lick that handphone. After you lick that handphone, you order. And the guy who's selling that so-called dried, specialized laksa Sarawak is in Kampung Melayu dekat Kuching mana. And he sends it by courier to you. And then when you eat the real thing, oh sedapnya. Medical healthcare. Right now, medical healthcare is moving economy. How? Sebab macam saya dah buat research sekarang ni atas stroke. Orang miskin tak ada akses pada fisioterapi. The physiotherapy cannot come to the patient because coming to the patient might you have COVID, infection. So we have to teach how to do the physiotherapy using the smart handphone. The poorest family in Kelantan has a kacai handphone, not Apple gila babi mahal handphone. And with that kacai handphone, anak dia switch on, and we tunjuk how to do physiotherapy of the stroke arm. For the poor, orang kaya dia boleh naik kereta, dia boleh sampai ke HUSM. Kita boleh buat physiotherapy when they arrive, but all the poor people have no access to good transport, so that's also a problem. Next slide, please. So these are examples. So here is what we smart fellows, konon smart lah, konon yang smart. Here we are, Sabah, Sarawak, you know, to Semenanjung, Malaysia, and here what we think, everybody does not need to move to Kuala Lumpur. Kalau keadaan sekarang ni, you know, when I was in Sekolah Menengah Sains, 3/4 of my class based are in Kuala Lumpur. They cannot do STIE in Kota Baru. Tak boleh. Kata kenapa tak boleh? I am here in Kota Baru and I can still try to push STIE. So do not think what the state of Kelantan or your state or your district can do for you, but what you can do for them. So you see the density of many projects in Kuala Lumpur, Klang Valley, and you look around Malaysia. So you tengok a small little bandar like Dungun, sorry lah kalau panggil Dungun tu kecil eh. Agriculture, fisheries, smart agriculture, hydroponic, fertigation system, timber. STIE can do a lot of things there. Okay? And Kuantan, fishing, aquaculture, handicraft, petrochemical, and food processing. I think I will show a slide on the fishing at the end. So every town and city ada kerja dia masing-masing if we can plan STIE properly, and we can in every town, whether it's urban or non-urban, rural, you will have B40, the poor, the underprivileged, that we can help with STIE. And next slide. You will see this is what Yayasan Sejahtera's target community is. So they also have projects where they are doing projects, and what STIE is doing under whatever ministry, and Yayasan Sejahtera and other yayasan, other groups of NGOs or OGOs can work together to achieve this. How are we going to do this? It's not to be covered in today's discussion, but maybe kita akan cakap-cakap, bincang-bincang, and my colleague Prof. Mahindran will also talk about his experiences in this field. Next slide, please. So the fisherman, my good friend, every time I operate a son or daughter or the fisherman himself, I get free fish. Daripada Tok Bali tu, dia bawa, dia throw over the front lawn. I see, my God, ketam udang, because dia terhutang budi, dia tak payah duit. Dia bagi ikan, udang, sampai tak buat dalam freezer. Oh, thank you very much. But I said to them, it's only my job. You know, I got to give this udang-udang kalau boleh nak dekat staff nurse, because it's a teamwork. It's not one single person doing work. So here we have the Malaysian trawler, the famous Malaysian trawler. Kalau siapa pergi Pulau Perhentian kan, kalau orang luar Kelantan, they will meet a sampan, a Malaysian trawler, or something of that type. Okay? And you will see that the dream, kita kata, oh itu Malaysian trawler sekarang ni. Yang kita punya STIE ni. Wah, apa teknologi kita boleh pakai? Yang kita ada 4G, 6G, kita ada printing, kita ada sensor, kita ada advanced material, kita ada cyber security, kita ada AI, kita maybe ada blockchain boleh guna untuk diorang, neurotechnology, bioscience technology. So if we had this type of ship made in Malaysia, orang Terengganu cukup pandai buat kapal. Dia bukan kapal kecil, kapal besar. Orang kampung, bukan ni, tapi dia orang pandai, by hand lagi. They have been doing it for hundreds of years. And here we can change the shape, the technology application into that sampan or trawler or whatever you want to call it, and include few other important stuff, like the GPS antenna. So that when they go somewhere, just like taking Grab, this is not, you're not the Grab, you're the self-Grab. You don't get lost because the GPS antenna will tell you where the fish is, where the ikan-ikan is, where the udang-udang, where the cantar totong is, you know. And the high-tech video cameras will do that as well. They are underwater cameras as well, not looking only down, but looking outwards. The electronic monitoring computerized system will tell you and get data, because we don't want to overfish. We don't want to kill the ikan-ikan kecil. We want to makan only the ikan-ikan besar. The hydraulic and rotational sensors, very important, so that the sampan or the trawler is stabilized. And you know that the health, the mental health of these nice fishermen out of sea for many, many weeks, God only knows what kind of stress, anxiety, or mental illness they have. So neurotechnology can be used to measure their brainwave, to detect their mood, whether they have stress, they have problems, you know. And nelayan using middleman, tak guna middleman dah. They can use blockchain technology to bypass the tauke yang duduk antara mereka dengan kami ni yang nak beli ikan dia. So they're sold to pay for the fish being sold. Okay? So there's so many things yang ada. Advanced material to keep the fish longer. Kalau nak buat ikan kering pun, tak jemur dah ikan kering atas lantai tu. Di mana lantai tu ada ayam, dia makan dengan ikan kering tu. Prek-prek keluar, campur dengan ikan kering. Sedapnya ikan kering tu kan. You use solar energy to dry the dried fish. So it's not dried by the sun, so that they can dry the fish all year round, or at the same time use it for energy. So just imagine, there's so many things we can do about the fishermen, just the fishermen here. And nanti mungkin Prof. Mahindran will also talk about the effect when we make the kid knowledgeable by education, the kid of the fisherman, the father who's a fisherman, the whole family of the fisherman can benefit from this technology adaptation and adoption. Okay, so I think next slide. I think that's the end of my slide. Okay, this is something that about agriculture. So agriculture is called smart agriculture. So you tengok agriculture ni satu bahagiannya agriculture and forestry. Tapi with doing something for agriculture and making it cost effective, sustainable, we will affect energy, we will affect people in business, we will affect cultural arts and tourism, we will affect medical healthcare. So the effect are intangible, tangible, direct, indirect. So you will see that from energy, feedstock, and renewable energy from biofuels. The biofuel come from the agriculture. Misalnya, kelapa sawit, misalnya. The leftovers from the kelapa sawit. Then the business, the financing part. Very soon, you won't have these big giant banks financing. Every daerah will have its own sustainable financing mechanism. Whether it is Islamic principles or non-Islamic principles, it's for us to decide and for us to do what it should be done. And blockchain technology will be there, even in daerah, satu daerah tu. It doesn't need to be satu negara atau satu dunia. And halal services is so very important. Agritourism. Tanam durian, kita boleh bawa orang tengok ladang kita, sambil makan, sambil learn about the durian, sambil learn about the culture. You can do so many things with just a durian plantation. Medical healthcare. You tanam, atas tu you tanam pokok durian, bawah tu you tanam pegaga. You tanam daun-daun yang tertentu that can be harvested for its biocompounds to improve memory of patients with dementia. I'm working a lot in pegaga, Centella asiatica. We need lots of Centella asiatica to improve someone's memory. So the ground below the palm oil, below these trees are not very well used. So those can be planted with Centella asiatica. So there are many things. Smart technology system will be something that you don't understand anymore. Prof. Mahindran will show you something very interesting. Smart, we won't call it smart cities anymore. Let's say we assume that most poor people are in rural. So it'll be smart villages. Smart transportation means maybe using drones. Not because the roads are not too good, so we have to fly them across, whatever. So good, sturdy drones to bring food, bring products, bring anything from one village to another village or from the village to the town, all controlled by the kampong people, and they can make money out of that. Okay, I will stop here now. This will be my last slide because I want to leave more time for discussion. And also Prof. Mahindran, who will also contribute some of his knowledge and information to you listeners. Thank you very much. I hope you have understood what STIE actually means. This is an idea, it is a framework. Nothing works without us implementing it. Once we understand what it is, orang miskin, orang kaya, orang miskin dengan orang miskin, dia tak payah orang miskin, orang kaya, orang miskin dengan orang miskin, orang kaya dengan orang miskin, orang kaya dengan orang kaya dengan lagi kaya, boleh membantu sesama sendiri untuk menjadikan ini sebagai bukan mimpi, tapi satu kenyataan. Terima kasih.
Baik, terima kasih Dr. Jafri. Very insightful, I believe, and kind of taken something, a subject that I think used to be before this macam di terawang-awangan sikit. You've taken it to ground and perhaps open up for all of us towards ideas on how to actually implement it, right? So
Yes.
without any delay, I would like to pass over to my good friend, the ever young and mercurial Rauda Nazran, to start the panel session with all the panelists. Silakan, Rauda.
Thank you so much, Pao, for passing the baton to me. So good afternoon, everyone, and a very happy Saturday. Very thrilled to see 43 participants in, even though it's a Saturday evening. So welcome to the panel session today, where we will actually unravel, I'd say, the mystery and the secrets behind a successful linkage of STIE, or Science, Technology, Innovation and Economics, with community development. A topic, actually, I believe that is very timely for us to speak about, given the current circumstances that we are all in. Just like Professor Jafri, I don't wish to go into the details as to what's happening in the country, but looking at the increase in, both in the poverty rate and the unemployment rate, not just in Malaysia, but also globally, I believe discussions should no longer just be about how to drive community development, but rather how to ensure community development is at the forefront of a country's mission now more than ever. And I think the topic that we are going to talk about today will unravel the discussion on that. So just a brief introduction. My name is Rauda. I think Pao introduced me earlier as the young girl. So yes, I am 25 years old. I am currently the CEO and founder of Accelerate Global. It is a social enterprise aimed at tackling youth unemployment issues through upskilling programs. So we run upskilling programs to help the B-Foods youths, to help the refugees, to help the stateless become entrepreneurs of their own, and we also provide them career-ready skills. But today is not about me, so I'm going to stop right there. But with me today, there are essentially 4 incredible panelists, 2 of whom Pao has already introduced, Puan Shireen Teresa and Professor Dato' Haji Dr. Jafri. Now, along with them, we've got 2 other panel speakers who respectively are experienced in conceptualizing STIE and working directly with the community and practitioners. So allow me to give a little bit of introduction about them. So third panelist we have today is Professor Mahindran. Now, Professor Mahindran is currently the Pro Vice Chancellor, Research Engagement and Impact at Sunway University. But apart from that, he is also a fellow of Academy of Sciences Malaysia. And he was actually also a member of the National Science Council of Malaysia, chaired by the Prime Minister of Malaysia. Absolutely honored to have you with us here today. Prof, definitely my honor to also moderate the session today. Now, that's not all. I think this is also worth mentioning as well, because he is actually the architect for the development of the Malaysian Science, Technology and Innovation 1010 My STIE framework. So he is definitely the best person to speak about the topic today. Now, the 4th panelist we have here with us is Mr. Juan Dasri. Dasri is a passionate, progressive individual, and he's super passionate about organizational transformation and in social entrepreneurship development, given his experience and background in various roles. Now, apart from being the Chief Executive Officer of ETHIS Malaysia, he is actually also the Managing Partner of New Uprise, the Chief Executive of Social Enterprise Academy Malaysia, and the co-founder of Purpose Malaysia. He also spearheaded the Chamber of Social Entrepreneur Development Malaysia when it was founded back in 2018. Community development is his bread and butter, I must say. He has experience in areas of corporate entrepreneurship, ecosystem building initiatives, and essentially leading innovation transformation, both in SEs and startups ecosystem, as well as the MNCs, as he has a stint at Accenture before. So those are essentially our panelists for today. Now, without further ado, I guess let's dive right in, because I'm sure everyone's dying to hear what the panels have got to say about the topic today. Now, when speaking about science, technology, innovation, and economics, or in short, STIE, and linking it with community development, I believe it is pertinent for us to first of all discuss about whether the community on the ground, because at the end of the day, we are talking about the communities, right? So whether the community on the ground, i.e. communities living in the rural communities, whether they are able to fully grasp the concept of STIE. There is no point of us talking about, oh yes, STIE, this is how we implement it, without actually addressing whether they understand it, because it links to them. We do not want the concept of STIE to be superficial, because the aim of it is essentially for the community themselves to have the independence to implement it in their lives, thus becoming independent implementers themselves. So I guess speaking on behalf of those who are not in the room, I'd like to pose the first question to the CEO of Yayasan Sejahtera, Puan Shireen. Puan, with your experience working with a community, right, as well as your capacity as the CEO of Yayasan Sejahtera, driving community building and community development, perhaps you can enlighten us a little bit as to the complexity of linking STIE to the community, and perhaps what are the factors that lead to this complexity? Puan Shireen, stage is yours. Oh, I think you're muted, Puan. I don't think we can hear her. Is it just me? Pao, can you hear her?
No, I can't actually.
Yes.
Yeah.
Puan, I think there's a little bit of a Okay, that's fine. I think I'll go to the next question first and I'll come back to you. So yes, as I mentioned, we did want to talk about the complexity of STIE, but it's okay because the second question I wanted to pose is actually to Dasri, because again, it is about complexity of linking STIE. But I guess with your experience, I wanted to bring the conversation a step further, looking at the current landscape of resources to drive NGOs forward, especially in the rural communities. I wanted to see what our organizations, such as IDEP, is doing to bridge the gap of lacking resources that currently is in existence between urban and rural NGOs. I guess to give a bit of context, the digital divide now has proven to be one of the factors as to why rural NGOs are sort of falling behind in terms of grasping existing funding resources, language use such as equity crowdfunding, peer-to-peer lending. To us, it might be normal, but perhaps are too bombastic for people to understand. And I think this needs to change. So perhaps you can enlighten us a little bit as to what ETHIS Malaysia is doing, because I know ETHIS is doing an incredible job in actually driving community development.
Thank you, Radha, and I hope you can hear me. And Assalamualaikum, and a very good day to everyone and our fellow panelists today. Very insightful topic that we're discussing today around STIE and linking back to community. I'll start off by perhaps break it down into three different factors when we speak about ecosystem, or rather the community, right? I think Puan Shireen later could actually touch on the first two, and I'll probably specifically elaborate a bit on the third portion with this with regards to capital. To me, I think there's three components. First is with regards to talent, and I think when we speak about community, there's a lot of talent that are doing great things, whether impacting the society, environment, and trying to amplifying that do good. Second to that is actually the knowledge, and I think Professor Dato Dr. Jeffrey have actually mentioned about the knowledge capital that actually Malaysians, or rather the Malaysia have, whether it's through the framework of STIE or rather just by doing things. And I guess the third portion that linking back with the talent and knowledge is with regards to resources and what you mentioned about capital. And I guess that's fundamental in terms of framing the conversations that we're going to have today, because it's going into the three-pronged approach of speaking about talent, speaking about knowledge, and I guess what I will try to decipher is with regards to the capital. And then coming back to the STIE, and I think Dr. Jeffrey have mentioned about the business finance service portion, and then there's part of that I think about the concept of creativity and innovation for alternative financing. And I guess that's what STIE wanted to do. We are actually a fintech company. Our ethos is really trying to touch lives or empowering humanity, or rather our vision and mission is actually uplifting humanity through fintech technology. And if you see our social media and stuff like that, our hashtag is circulate good. And what we mean by circulate good is actually circulate good to the real economy. It's not the capitalism as we know it. Some may argue it's a bit broken because the poorer are getting poorer, the richer are getting richer, just by virtue of the current structural capitalism. What we try to do is actually try to disrupt that, and that's what we mean by circulate good through the works or the fintech that we do. I can go into detail of that one, but coming back to your question, I think first and foremost, I try to demystify, the concept of crowdfunding, equity, P2P, and the stuff that you mentioned just now. But broadly speaking, and I don't know if many of us here know, or rather Malaysians know, if I break down the word crowd and fund, crowd meaning, it's pretty much ramai, mass, and fun is dana. What it does, and I think a lot of this concept is prevalent in the community, whether through donation, through charity, and of sorts. Crowdfunding is nothing new. Probably the term is new, where you plus the element of the keramaian, the crowd, and also the funding or fundraising into one. Why it has gained traction so far in Malaysia, or rather nowadays, it's actually with the concept of already the confluence of the gig economy or digitalization. A lot of the crowdfunding platforms now are riding on online, and I guess fundamentally what that do is actually it gives greater accessibility. It's an alternative financing, because traditionally when we speak about financing, it usually goes to the bank. And sometimes bank, if you want to get commercialization, in the sense of commercialization, you need to have collaterals and stuff like that to get loans and stuff like that. Crowdfunding have disrupted that a bit. I'm speaking crowdfunding very broadly, not donation, equity, or P2P. But what it's supposed to do is actually to, pretty much give access, or rather the capital access that the community wants, not just to the bankables, but also to the underprivileged, the underserved. And that's where we wanted to do. And coming back to ITS Malaysia specifically, in Malaysia, we actually run two types of crowdfunding. ITS Malaysia specifically is equity crowdfunding. What that means is we move away from charity crowdfunding, meaning to say, we try to get organizations who are actually doing businesses amplify good through their operations. And that's why we always, or rather one way of doing it is championing equity crowdfunding, meaning to say run a proper business, but amplify the good through your businesses. Now, I'm not disregarding the NGOs, the non-profits, because I think you need to have those as well. And that's where, our sister brand in Natis is Global Sedekah. I think Puan Sherry mentioned earlier with regards to the stuff that Yayasan Sejahtera is doing with regards to the wakaf and stuff like that. Global Sedekah is also a fintech, a charity-based crowdfunding, or rather the donation-based crowdfunding for entities, organizations, businesses, NGO who wants to raise funds. We provide the charity-based crowdfunding in that regard, and we work with the organizations or communities to pretty much disburse the fund that is collected through the platform. And I could just share very briefly what that means is that because a lot of our donors and even investors through ITS, not just based in Malaysia, diorang ada in Singapore, there's actually good people in UK as well, and also in the Middle Eastern. While they are not actually residing in Malaysia, but they are actually have the intent on Nawaitu, we call it, to do good with their money. Whether it's charity, whether it's equity, it's entirely up to the investors or donors. But this is what we wanted to amplify with regards to our offering of going online through the, I guess if the STIE is the innovation-based business finance services. So yeah, that's probably broadly in terms of what we do. I'll just end on this one. I think Radha can go back to Pancharin to ask the question. With regards to the prolonged COVID-19 period, some parts of Malaysia have gone through EMCO for I don't know for how long, supposedly until the end of this week or rather next week. But we also have innovate a bit in terms of our offering. We just don't look into just equity and charity. And this is a campaign that we just started. And if any one of you wanted to engage with us and to explore further, I'm happy to get that conversation. What we try to do is actually we realize that there's a lot of food banks are going around. And a lot of community not tolong, whether it's through donation, whether it's through delivery and stuff like that. Us, because we know our pool of donors and investors are also looking at that. And through my equity crowdfunding platform, we already know there's micro, small, medium enterprises who are already doing that. So what we try to do is actually we try to start a campaign, baru je this week, we call it Empower Malaysia, whereby we try to connect our donors, investors, plus the micro SME who are doing the food bank initiatives, that we could help coordinate and raise fund through. Yeah, so just very broadly on that one. So we always innovate ways, trying to find ways how we can uplift humanity. So it's not really transactional based for sure, but this is something that we thought, what the Malaysian are needing at this point of time, and we try to respond to that, inshallah. So go back to you, Radha. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dasri. I really love the hashtag circulate good. It's something that we definitely need, at the moment. And I think going back to what you said about actually having multiple arms, right? Equity crowdfunding, there's also Global Sedekah. That is how you actually link the innovation and economics to the community, by actually having multiple arms to make sure that everyone can fit, where they see fit. So for example, I think with Accelerate, it's more equity crowdfunding, perhaps with NGOs, it will go to the Global Sedekah and so on and so forth. forth. And I think that's really beautiful. There is actually a poll going on. Would an equity crowdfunding ecosystem be beneficial in securing sustainability of operations for nonprofit and social enterprise? And 100% said yes. So it's definitely, yes, I agree. And I'm sure Dasri is really happy to hear this as well. Now,
not equity specifically, but crowdfunding, I think.
Yes, crowdfunding.
Yes.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be equity, right?
Equity,
yeah,
yes,
yeah,
correct.
perfect. Cool. So, on the note of actually circulating good, I was actually thinking to link it to Prof. Mahindran. I think we'll start with you. With the work that you do in actually molding the concept of STIE, based on what I introduced you just now, you are very much spearheading the concept of STIE in the country. So I wanted to ask, in terms of actually implementing this concept directly to the community, perhaps, you can share with us and the audience the top 2 successful initiatives and the programs you have executed with the community related to STIE and perhaps its intergenerational ripple effects, which I believe is definitely needed now more than ever. Oh, Prof, you're muted.
Thank you, Rauda. Thank you, Rauda. I think it's an excellent forum, and Prof. Jaffrey talked about the 10-10, and much of it is at the national level, strategic, and there's a lot of work that is happening at the industry level. And I come from Klang, and during my time, Klang, it is a rural, Pandamaran is a rural port, so we've seen a lot of poverty there, and over time, urban poverty, and it still lingers. And the question always that ran in my mind is, how can we make a difference? And I'm going to walk through with you a case study, a real case study, that how STIE can make the transformation and has made the transformation. There are 8 steps. And if you allow me, the next 5 minutes, I'll just walk through with you and exactly what Prof. Jaffrey spoke about, and Juan spoke about on how we actually do it on the ground with my STIEs. Okay, so I think we see this, and I mean, as being a scientist, we like to go by evidence. Like Prof. Jaffrey, we want to be, looking at the evidence. And this is a study that we did 10 years ago, and we already anticipated the digital divide and the socioeconomic gap. We made some good progress, from 2009 to about 2014, 2015. But the gaps have widened. And we can see the more recent data that show from the household data that relative poverty has gone up and inequality has also gone up. So how do we solve this problem, right? We need to have a whole of nation, a whole of society, and whole of community strategy. And this is what Prof. Jaffrey talked about, the 10-10. But the technology strategy alone will not work. We need to have an ecosystem strategy, as Juan mentioned. We need to understand on the ground what the infrastructure is to support the B40 or the rural community. We need to understand the technology, the talent, the governance systems, the incentives, institutions, who are the ones that are championing their cause. We talk about civil society, government offices, the strategic partnerships, and later on I'll talk about global best practices because we are open to competition, right? I'm going to walk through with you an example that we have worked on. This is a gardener, flower seller, right? Family of 4, they're in the 40s, 2 children, 17 and 15. The parents' education level is Form 3. They are considered B40. Income level is only 1,500, below the poverty line, right? And they've been in this situation for a long time, and I'm very sure many people are, And what is the problem? We see that they do the hard work. There is a middleman that actually buys this thing. They get paid. They don't get the markups. The markups are earned by somebody else. And what we see is that they work really hard, and the poverty cycle perpetuates. So, and I think Juan mentioned, how do we, bypass this? Can my STIE make a difference? Can they break the poverty cycle? That means, are there leapfrogging, frugal technology, business management tools? The answer is yes. My STIE can make a difference. And I'll show you how we've done this, right? There are 8 steps to this. The first one is that we expose the family to the use of smartphones. The parents may not be very attuned to it, but the two children were caught on it very, very quickly. They were in Form 3, Form 4, Form 5. The father and mother started using it for basic use, SMS, and the children became more advanced users. This is the first step to the network economy already. So then we needed to handhold them through this process. And how did we get the money? It's crowd financing. We got a few people put in some money, about $2,000 odd, bought those for them, right? And we started, exposing them to the digital platform, of course, starting out with SMS and all those things. And what we started seeing is that slowly we were able to connect. Instead of bypassing weddings, they got their web page, the Facebook up, WhatsApp up. They started directly, helping with weddings, talking to wedding planners, flower shops. They bypassed the intermediary. Even funerals. I'll talk about, COVID. Weddings were not there, flower shops are closed, but what kept them going is actually the funerals, because you still need flowers, you see? So what we see is that they started expanding, technology and celebrations, birthdays and so on. So the children now were part of this process. And this is where the intergenerational link is very important. Otherwise, they would have left the flower, the farm and would have done something else. And this is what we see hollowing out of the rural areas. So as we develop, you see one by one pillars of the ecosystem was developed from ground up. The infrastructure, these are basic technology, talent. And as we progressed, what we told them is that as money was coming in, you need to manage the money properly. And this is the challenge that many rural and B40 group, they don't know how to manage money. And this is where helping them manage the money, giving them businessmen. And the good thing is that the children were learning financing and managing the books. And we started seeing that we were building the ecosystem, telling them best practices. And as they started doing that over time, the children got interested. The son, enrolled in a finance course. The daughter was still in high school, helping manage the process. And one by one, we started seeing their economic status starting to improve. Eventually, by 2020, this is before COVID, they were starting to network with other parts of Malaysia in terms of supplying, getting supplies and including getting cheap products from India, flowers from India to assemble for the local market. And they started buying their own assets before they were outsourcing. Then the father bought a scooter, which is a second-hand, and eventually bought a van. By 2020, their economic status improved from 1,500 to about 9,000 a month, right? They were starting to use outsourcing, assets were growing, but we told them to manage their resources, and we have to handhold them. This is the challenge for many of them. So we started seeing, they started, getting, interest from India, sourcing out, and also to Singapore. This is pre-COVID, and these were the plans, right? So what we saw was a simple network technology that brought in the younger generation, and we saw that intergenerational partnership that is crucial. Most models in developed, in rural areas, even fishing community, the second generation don't want to do it because they don't see the value in it. But if you can connect the technology, you see now the traditional fishing becomes more modern, as what Prof. Jeffrey mentioned. So we started seeing the father taking horticulture training to ensure the crops are better financial management, manpower planning, how they schedule, and customer service. And this is really important. How do you manage your customers so that they become your clientele, a long-term clientele? And over time, they started thinking, how do we start? And as they were developing over the last 5 years, hey, now we can do vegetables, we can do fruits. The same platform is already there. The clienteles were there. Your networks were already there. And they started, and the mother started catering. With COVID now, every morning there is breakfast and lunch and dinner. And this morning I spent 30 ringgit buying breakfast. So we see that, it opens up an entire new value chain if we manage this ecosystem. It's not about technology. Technology is important, but we need to have a better business systems, a better ecosystem for the business. So what we saw was that we clearly saw that, the diversification strategy, that means a family can do multiple things, and what was a challenging circumstances can be truly a positive platform for development if we use that network economy. And that's what the 10-10 does. It all need not be high, super advanced technology. We have frugal innovation that enables them to access the resources, and we start seeing that this is the way you break, the middleman and the poverty cycle, directly. So simple technology, capability development, and not only for the parents, but also for the children, a diversification. And ultimately, we see that we have continuous improvement. And this is something very important. This group needs continuous hand-holding, mentoring, networking, until the second generation takes on and develop it. And this is something I can't emphasize enough. That's how we enable communities to leapfrog the full ecosystem. The 8 I's are important for the 8 steps to be executed. And as Prof. Jeffrey mentioned, we have all these communities with all these rural areas. We can easily build this network economy with very little cost. A frugal technology, it's about networking, right? And that is what that model is. And we can clearly, clearly have better market reach and richness of products and services, from Dungun to Gua Musang to Sandakan. It's building that network economy. So it's not just high-level technology. We have technology, frugal technology that enables that networking and plugging into the system. And that's what makes this MySTIE workable with that ecosystem. Thank you.
Super. Thank you so much, Prof. I think that's really concise, especially when you actually presented the case studies, which is essentially very, very vital in terms of understanding whether or not STIE works. Now, we've got a question from the audience, actually, Mr. Pervaiz Ahmed, and I think I'm going to pose this question to Professor Dr. Jafri, because you are a part of essentially the community development and you are an enabler. So the question is, how do you see COVID-19, whether or not it has impacted community development with respect to STIE's role as an enabler, and how do you see the future unraveling and the implications on it for the short run as well as the long run? Professor Dato, stage is yours.
Thank you for such a difficult question. I have to have a glass ball. Okay. Difficult because in Malaysia now, Malaysia is like in ICU now. It's like my neurosurgery ICU. Things change every 30 minutes. So looking at the effects of COVID on everyone, the rich, the poor, the very, very poor, it has affected everyone and every business. I think sometimes when we say that businesses are not closed and are bankrupt or can never come up again, I think that is telling the truth. So how do we move from nowhere to somewhere? Maybe Mahindran will be the better person because he's on that area than me. But what my personal opinion is, what I see in Kota Baru, Kelantan, or in Kelantan, just looking at the shops that I go to, 70% of the eating shops I go to are closed. They don't open anymore. Last year they were on Grab and on Food Panda. Now you can't find them. You can type satay, something, nothing comes out. Those guys have gone. They're not there anymore. So where are they now? They cannot cross KL. There's nothing much in KL for them to do. So I'm not sure what exactly they are because there's no data. There is no data. For example, you have to take Kota Baru or take Kubang Krian, there is no data. We know that they are in trouble. We don't see these white flags. I drive around Kota Baru to look for these white flags. I don't see those white flags. But I know they are hungry. I know that they come to USM now sick and unable to pay their hospital bills because they're not government servants. They don't have GLs, guarantee letters. I know that some people have to die because they have no access to transport to come to the hospital. So in this, just Kota Baru itself, I can speak about Pasir Mas, and I see so many changes already. I see empty shops, and they're not working. Even when the government say, okay, you can open from 6 a.m. to 10 p.m., they're shut. You know, they're not even doing online selling. So where are they? So what are going to happen to them? I'm not sure, but maybe Prof. Mahindran can add on.
Yeah, Doctor, sorry, yeah, I think the question, I mean, because there's a question from the audience, actually from Puan Sharmila of Yayasan Inovasi Malaysia, which I think is very related to this, because you mentioned that, you know, when you are in Kelantan, there are no white flags, but you know they need it, right? So we're talking about people on the community. So the question from Puan Sharmila is I think it's quite relatable to this, in terms of, because she's been working alongside the B40 a lot, and so she's asking whether or not there should be a dedicated policy that's focused on the B40 specifically, you know, and then perhaps what else, or what are there any other assistance that's required to be in place for these people? I was thinking to pose the question first to Puan Shireen, and then we can go to Professor Mahindran. I think she's back and her microphone is working.
Is it working? Sorry.
Yes, it is Puan. Yes.
Yeah, we were testing the whole morning, and then at the final hour, it just went off. Sorry, guys. Thank you. I think let's go back to the model of Yayasan Sejahtera that I started with earlier. And I showed that graduation model where it's actually the first rung is access, which is what Dr. Jeffrey has said. You know, now there is very, very limited access. So people who have moved up the rung have now moved down or even further down from where they started. So that's where, you know, targeted sort of measures and targeted policies need to be, you know, implemented, and actions on the ground. So there are few actors, and you mentioned about complexity, trying to actually make this STIE work. There's a lot of actors. There's academics, there are people who think about the framework, there are people who actually execute it. What we need to build, and what Prof. Mahindran has said, is the ecosystem. Connect the community, connect the academics, connect the, you know, the actors on the ground, so that then, you know, that there is real stuff that's happening. Right now, I think the connection can be better. It's a bit more sporadic at the moment. How do we drive the agenda to actually then really keep people focused on making that connections, the you know, access to capital, Dasri and his ecosystem? How do we mobilize access to capital? So now it's about access. I don't think we'll move further because the pandemic has become, you know, very, very severe in the way we manage it, and you know, a lot more people are already slipping off their where they were before. B40 and M40, I want to also talk about the M40, because the M40 are the ones who are income earners and pay taxes to government. And actually with the M40, they have they are the consumers, right? The buying power is with them. So if the M40 are also impacted and have no access to, you know, sustainable income, then the whole ecosystem will be disrupted. So we have to think about how we do targeted approaches or targeted support for M40 as well, because the middle class is actually powering the economy.
Yeah, thank you so much, Puan. Thank you. So I think what Puan mentioned, essentially having targeted measures, what works for these people. We can go back to Prof. Mahindran earlier. I think he has something to say, but I think a more targeted question from me would be, you've worked a lot with the community and relating it to STIEs, and you've worked a lot with multiple frameworks, and you've seen whether the frameworks work or not. So I guess my question is, which relates back to Puan Shireen's answer, which one of these frameworks mentioned, or which one of these frameworks that you've worked on before, is the most effective for the community, given that their needs are very much different, you know, than people who live in the urban area?
Yeah, so thank you for the question. I think all of the questions are very related. I think before we do any intervention, we need to understand every individual circumstances. It's very different. They are different, you know, businesses and different operations and different localities. And what would be really important, I think, moving forward is that we need to, I think we have the capacity and capability, the policymakers, both at the federal, state, and also municipalities, have the the capacity and the capability to develop a database for all the P40 in their localities. We used to have Miskin Tega, we have database for them. And we can easily link them up to WhatsApp and other things to really find out hotspot. And using big data analytics, we can actually analyze the patterns. That's having said at the higher level. But I think coming back to the question that how is COVID impacting this community? What we see on the ground is that those who adapt this basic digital technology are doing better than those who do not. So we are starting to see that, those who adapt this technology are, and also you have to have the entrepreneurial, drive. I'll come back to the people who run their own businesses and then the employees, right? So we see that the entrepreneurs are the ones the most impacted. These are the gig economy, bus drivers, naslama sellers, all these people, and they are quite a fair bit of them. They are in that gig economy and micro small businesses. So what we see is that just teaching them how to use this basic technology. I'll give you a simple example. There's a breakfast place I go to, which is Machi that sells naslama. And she said nowadays people don't come because they're not going to work. They're all at home. So I said, next time they come, you take their telephone number, and then you tell your granddaughter to send SMS to them. Today we've got this nasi perche and this and that and all those things. And she said after doing that, they started getting a lot more orders. People don't cook anymore. They don't want to cook anymore. They just want pickup and delivery. A simple thing made a big difference. The same thing, I go to this Tosai place in the morning and I asked her, and she said, my business has gone up. On a weekend, I can make about 400 ringgit because people don't want to cook. A simple technology can make a difference, right? And the same thing with, with the suppliers, or as I showed you the example of the flour sellers, and, so this network economy is increasingly going to be important even post-COVID. So those who are prepared, I think this is my STIE from 30,000 feet coming down to the ground, right? And teaching them how to develop the platform, digital marketing, simple digital marketing. What we taught the machi who is selling the naslama is simple digital marketing, using SMS, asking the daughter who's 13, 14 years old to send to everybody, today got nasi goreng and today got this, and if you buy this is a discount. And you see that they start building, and this is true for all businesses. They can even start supplying for companies where the canteens are not open, where they can deliver, somebody can pick it up. So pretty much all the businesses can adopt this kind of model. So we see that, how do we support this new gig economy that is a network-based economy? And
Thank
I think
you very
this,
much, Prof.
Yeah.
Yes, I must say,
sorry,
yeah.
Radolf, I can also add from what Prof. Mahindran has just said. I think we need to look at more localized actions. You're right, the framework is good in terms of thinking about solutions, but when we go down to the ground, it's very, very much localized. And we can use very simple innovation. The word innovation sometimes makes us think that it has to be, wow, this really, high-tech stuff that goes down and solves everybody's problem. But really, the localized actions and people who have, creativity in terms of how they come up with their sort of survival, survival sort of response to their situation is where I think we need to empower a lot more.
Yeah,
can I just add one more? I think this is really important. But 12 years ago, we started this computer for poor kids. We had 22,000 kids on it. And these kids know how to use computers really well. And during the period of lockdown, they fared much better than many kids who did not have access. These are kids that would have gone truant. We have this program, which is, these kids who are in this rural, difficult circumstances have high chance of truancy and dropout. But bringing computers, we have a scientific paper recently published that show that increase their creativity and enthusiasm. We see that these kids are better suited now in the current mode of education compared to those who don't have computer. A simple technology, and they're helping their machis and their grandmothers and mothers to adapt. This is what I mean by intergenerational, closing that gap.
Yes. Yes, Prof, I definitely agree with you. I think the intergenerational effort and collaboration is definitely needed. In fact, it is one of the values that we uphold at Accelerate Global, because we believe every single generation, they've got their own strengths. And if everyone works together, it is going to be definitely incredible. I cannot help myself, Prof, and I think this next question will be for Dasri. When we talk about implementing technology, right? Even if it's a simple technology, even if it's just, a mobile phone and SMS, and having entrepreneurs adopting the digital side of the business to remain viable in COVID-19, I cannot help myself but to think about the capital, about the funding, the money that they're going to get to essentially take off and implement that tech in their business itself. And again, if we relate it to the community, the lack of resources is still there, and it's worth to discuss. So the next question is for Dasri in terms of the gap to generate sustainable financing in terms of entrepreneurs or local entrepreneurs trying to actually implement the tech side to their business to remain relevant. Do you see any significant gap, Dasri, in generating sustainable financing in funding community development in Malaysia or abroad?
Yeah, very good question. I think in all honesty, and I'm going to transcend across two hats here. One is actually from a policy or government standpoint. We know, there's money out there, whether it's through government interventions like, Penjana, Perkasa, and Pemulihan and stuff like that. The problem, and often when you go to the ground, the money does not flow to them. So that's the most prevalent sort of challenge that the communities are facing. And I guess with everything that comes up from top down, right? I think this question was alluded to similar to what Prof mentioned. I think regardless of the framework, it has to be very nimble and agile enough to flow through in terms of the execution. Money wise, I think because of that structural sort of challenges of flowing, I call it, sometimes the money always flow to the arteries of the society, it's not the capillaries. So sometimes it's very stuck at a certain organization, and they can only do so much in that front. And I guess the essence of, or the ethos of crowdfunding also is it's coming up from the bottom up, because societies among themselves or around themselves, they know what are the challenges. And I know I'm coming from resources standpoint, like capital, like donations, fundings, and stuff like that. And this is also something quite similar to what Dr. Jeffrey has mentioned, where society needs help. Sometimes either they are shy to ask for it, and whether there's a divide in terms of, I guess, urban and poor sort of divide, and then hence why there's always a pockets of communities that are very not supported, and there's affluent communities that have the capital to support, but sometimes can't bridge that gap. Coming back to, I'm digressing a bit, but I think I wanted to paint this picture. Coming back to Dr. Jeffrey's mention about some micro entrepreneurs. For example, I think it has been reported, which is quite worrying. I think for the last in last week, I think if this is not, or rather Malaysia is going through this prolonged phase, I think around 14 million people get infected and 7 million would lose jobs. And a lot of these people who are losing jobs is actually the micro SMEs, which is actually a big backbone of our economy. 98% of the GDPs, or rather it's from the MSMEs. So it's very worrying. And coming back to this thing about Bendera Putih and stuff like that, it's very easy to be politicized. And I guess that's the downside of it, because people are aware and are ashamed of these things. But coming back to what Prof mentioned, and this is where you were alluding to, whether there's a challenges in terms of divide. I don't think so with regards to technology. And I'm not just speaking in terms of resource from crowdfunding standpoint, but also executing to the community. If you see now, and this is coming back to the entrepreneurial lens of things, what Prof mentioned, instead of the white flag or the black flag, and some people condone it, oppose it and stuff like that, a lot of the communities now are going on the digital platform. If you don't know, for the past 2-3 days or rather week, there's this platform called kitajaga.co. And that's essentially, it's a use of technology to bridge that demand and problem, right? Where people maybe not, putting flags outside, they just go on that app and you can see where's the spots of people who are needing it. And coming back to Prof mentioning of the big data, right? Because you see the urban populations or urban cities are willing to help. And you see there's pockets of it are rates here, meaning needed the help. Now, the question is, and maybe through this STIE framework, how do you try to bridge that gap, right? Because there's a lot of affluent people who want to help. There's a lot of places who needs help, but they cannot breach, right? And I guess that's where, there's a lot of opportunities. And I'm not talking, profit and monetization per se, but this is from an ecosystem standpoint. There is, and I think Puan Shereen was mentioning, there's not much of a tactical ecosystem or concerted effort that's going on, which is quite unfortunate because, when Prof mentioned about talent, I've mentioned about capital, and Professor Dr. mentioned about knowledge. There are, all of these things in Malaysia, but we're not concerted enough to go through in terms of the community development. So I guess that's something that we need to think of beyond the STIE, top down, bottom up, and this is something I guess we need to make sure we do better to support the ecosystem.
Thank you so much, Dasri. Yes, I think that's really important for us to ponder upon because, like you mentioned, there are actually opportunities and resources out there. It's just essentially us leveraging on it. I'm going to stay on with you, Dasri, because there's a question from Anita Charles here, specifically for you. It diverts a little bit from our topic today, but it's essentially asking you to share an example of a successful crowdfunding program that has uplifted marginalized communities. The question is from Anita Charles.
Right, there's a couple, it's a bit hard for me to answer that because there's actually a lot. If you want to go to our crowdfunding platform, globalsedekah.com, you can see this is pretty much donation-based crowdfunding. There's a lot that we do in terms of food bank, for example. There's actually a restaurant in Wangsa Maju, if I'm not mistaken, Halaman Nurani, that we have helped fundraise for them, but they actually provide free foods for the ones that are needing it. And we try to transcend that model to what I've mentioned earlier when I started the Empower Malaysia model. So it's not just food, but if organizations, micro, small, medium enterprises, and why, again, we're just focusing on micro, small, medium enterprises as pilot for now, because of the ones I mentioned earlier about the being the backbone of the economy. And I'm quite aware, some of these small, medium enterprises are using their own pocket money to do these food bank initiatives. And when they've raised funds, it's out of their own good and, and stuff like that. But some people, I'm not saying everyone, but some people ask, skeptical sometimes when you do raise fund, whether this is legit or not, whether this is going to the right account or not. So I feel as a crowdfunding platform can help them do that. So we can also do what we do. A lot of it, we do KYC, know your customer. So making sure that, there's no fraudulent activities, mismanage of funds going through and stuff like that. So I thought it would be good for us to help them out to do that so that they can just focus on the ground initiatives without worrying about how to raise funds and stuff like that. Having said that, though, I mean, if any of you who wants to get some sort of support from us, whether it's to crowdfunding and stuff like that, I'm more than happy to discuss further. Entities like Yayasan Sejahtera, NGOs out there, or even micro. Small medium enterprises, we're pretty much trying to responding to the current needs of Malaysia with all of these struggling times.
Perfect. Thank you, Dasri. I think I want to pass it to Puan Shereen because she has quite extensive experience in, handling successful crowdfunding, especially to uplift marginalized communities. Puan, do you have anything to add to Dasri?
I think Dasri covered it all. Thank you for setting up the platforms. The other bit is actually the information and how different communities get to know that these are initiatives out there. Besides just waving the flag, the knowledge and how we transfer that information to people on the ground is something quite critical. Perhaps NGOs and non-profits are the connector the bridge that Dasri was saying.
Yeah, perfect.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, Juan. I'm gonna.
Prof. Mahindran had his hand up.
Yes,
Can
I see.
can
Go
I
on.
comment? I think on the financing, or it's not just. I run an NGO, spans across Malaysia, and we realized that there are members that are willing to help, and as correctly pointed out, they wanted a cohesive place. And what we started seeing is that people willing to provide support on food bank, right, and providing that. And we also have call out for laptops, any secondhand laptops that people have, because the children, some of them don't have access to digital technology. Children are studying, they don't. So we have calls for laptops, and people have laptops, have donated. They probably have the second laptop sitting, and they donate those things. And what is really interesting is that we are also seeing that there's a call out for helping on online education, right, for their children, because they find and there are very good portals, global portals that help, but it requires payments. And we see that some of our members are contributing to that, which is really great. And the fourth one is actually people are out of jobs, and they realize they don't have English skills or Bahasa skills. So they now can go online and learn, but that requires cost. Again, supporting them for this upskilling. So it's not just crowd financing, actually it's crowd resourcing that is, taking them to the next stage.
Yeah.
And I think
love
that
that.
is the movement.
Yeah.
So
Crowdsourcing. I think Rauda
Crowdsourcing.
can share that. I think she did that last year when COVID started. Pretty much that. Maybe you could share, Rauda.
Yes, I did. Yeah, for crowdsourcing. But I think I'm going to pause on that. I'll come back to myself, because there's a question actually for Professor Dr. Jaffrey, and he's been quiet a little bit there. And this question is really for him, Prof. So we can see now more than ever that Rakyat is taking care of the Rakyat. It says here, it's from an anonymous attendee. So a lot of initiatives that's powered by the Rakyat, white flag, bendera putih, etc. And he wanted to know your views on how the government can step up and fill in this gap that is causing a lot of tension in the society right now, especially to reduce more emphasis on falling into the B40. So I guess Professor can enlighten us, because he has worked with multiple governments before.
We might need to extend this session.
With different ideas. Okay, so nak kata off record is recorded kan. So let me say, and tomorrow if you see me behind bars or something,
We'll come and get you, don't worry.
Oh, yes.
But the problem in Malaysia and this is my I view as a medical physician who treats patients regardless of race, religion, beliefs, etc. Everything is so politicized. Everything is so politicized. We had hungry students in the state of Kota Baru, in the universities. Outside the universities, hungry people from KL want to drive up, bring the food, give it to them, which required certain permission. Tak tahu kenapa orang KL, orang Selangor tak boleh datang Kelantan, whatever lah, reason. A certain member, political member or person has to be there to hand the bungkusan, even though it's not his idea. Faham tak? So dia tak bagi datang ke the state of Kelantan. And here all the food is stuck in Klang Valley, and the hungry people are in Kelantan. So in the end, what do we do? Then you buy, you courier, you tax the money to the person in Kelantan to buy the food within Kelantan. Orang Selangor tak datang, So I think that political will has to be there to be transparent. Kita sekarang ni jangan kisahlah. Sorry lah, my good friend Menteri Besar Kelantan. Kita tak kisah. And I think Menteri Besar Kelantan is a nice guy. Jangan kita kisah yang ni PKR ke, PH ke, BN ke, PAS ke apa, Cina ke, Melayu ke, India ke, Islam ke, tak Islam ke, Pondan ke, Bapuk ke, apa ke. Everybody in this current situation has to be treated equally. Minus the ceramah. Kena bagi dakwah dulu baru boleh bagi makanan. You know, Abid Liu kata, no. You know, and I agree with Abid Liu. So we have to watch this political thing. Everything must have a political chop on it. Every assistant, whether it's food bank ke, tak food bank ke, nak bagi benda, has something ada udang di sebalik mihun. And that's the problem with us. And then bila orang...
Yeah, sorry. When are you going to run for office?
After I retire, whatever it is, here we are frustrated with this thing. Orang niat baik, banyak duit, banyak, tapi there are certain people still now, in this month, with 8,000 cases today, still want that to be politics over others. Let us treat every human being equally. Forget about parti politik dia, religion dia semayang 5 kali sehari ke, dia asalkan dia tak pembunuh dan sebagainya. We treat everybody equal now and forever. Orang boleh bertaubat, orang jahat boleh jadi baik, orang baik boleh jadi jahat. We take care of them with humanity and respect. Itu yang penting. Tapi itulah, kalau aku cakap banyak-banyak, besok dapat surat, oh, anda telah bla bla bla. Okay lah. But this is, I think, 32.5 plus 5 million illegal immigrants also will agree with me that this is how we should treat each other. And if we treat each other and we start talking to each other, tak ada silo. Silo ni banyak sangat. Silo ni. And everybody wants to be the boss. Everybody wants to be the boss. Nobody wants to be the coolie. I love to be the coolie. I love to be the implementer. We have to have lots of implementers. And forget, in this COVID period, let us all put our weapons down and work together, bring Malaysia up to a respectful level, first at the district, kampung level, community level, and then hopefully we can move forward.
Thank you so much, Prof. That was really insightful. And yes, my question stands, when are you going to run for office? Because I think everything that you mentioned is definitely, I mean, I seconded everything, and I'm sure all the panelists and all the participants seconded that as well. Having the ability or the humility, if I can say, to actually be an implementer and an executor, as opposed to just sitting in a leadership position, is definitely vital to ensure we can drive the country forward, especially in the state that we are all in. Now, putting perhaps some political questions to rest, let's move to the next question that we have from the audience today. It's from Miss Sharmila. And I was thinking this question, I'm going to open up to all the panelists who wishes to answer, because every one of you are experienced in this. We are looking to implement, implementing to close the digital gap at the community with the makerspace, Ruang Reka, Central Kitchen. Those are the things we have in mind. From our study in Malaysia, we've got around 100 makerspace, but now only around 40 are practically running. The sustainability part is rather worrying. What do you think the STIE framework can be practically used to reduce the downside of such initiatives? So I guess the question from Ms. Sharmila is, we've got a lot of maker spaces in Malaysia, but only perhaps 40% are working. And so she's worried about the sustainability part of it and whether STIE have got perhaps a power to ensure the maker space is sustainable. Open to all panelists.
Can I start?
Yes, Juan, go on.
Maybe it's time for us, like taking a leaf from what Prof was saying, to collaborate and converge different initiatives and different activities. You know, when times were good, everybody started their own thing, right? Now is actually the opportunity to collaborate better, find those areas where there are common points that we can come together. And then actually what we roll out will be stronger, because there are a lot of good ideas, good initiatives, people who can do different things, but you need to come together and have a concerted effort. So, you know, of course, it's diminishing because of the situation that we're in. But the 40 that are still running in that question, the 40 can actually then multiply through very strategic collaboration or reaching out and say, look, I do this, I have this item, you know, the conversion of everybody's effort is needed at this point of time.
Agreed, Juan. In fact, just to share with what we do at Accelerate right now, because of COVID, we partner a lot with NGOs on the ground. For example, now we partner with Club Asnaf Pacok Kelantan, Majlis Belia Selangor, to actually mobilize our programs and reach out to the people that we're not able to reach out to. And I think that's a really important value now. And I think now it's more evident that collaboration is more important than essentially, you know, competing and then getting to the top. Thank you so much, Juan. I want to stay with you actually, Puan, because as we talk about COVID-19 and as we talk about STIE, I also wanted to see perhaps how can NGOs take the current disruption as a catalyst for change to build a more sustainable and a more stronger and effective community development initiatives.
The NGO, the non-profit world, is also highly competitive. Why? Because we're running after the same pot of funding. And the owners of capital, Dasri and gang, you have that much funds, but there are 100 NGOs going after that fund. I think the non-profit world need to also wake up and also look at collaboration and building on each other's strengths. You could be a larger entity and a smaller sort of NGO that has some skills and expertise in a local location or you know, some specific things that they do. Merge and actually be, you know, provide a more holistic support. That's when the donor community or the funders will say, okay, you guys are getting your act together. You are collaborating rather than competing. This pool of funds will become even more impactful if everybody sort of take chunks of it and come together and do it rather than, you know, compete. Because, you know, it's tough to continue to compete. The sources of funding may be lesser now or shrinking. So the NGO community, the non-profit needs to come together and not compete over, you know, sometimes similar things. The collaboration is really critical now.
Yeah, definitely, Puan. I'm actually really glad you and Professor Dr. Jaffrey spoke about that. Again, I've been looking at the landscape at the moment. There are a lot of organizations and NGOs doing the same thing. However, they're not able to amplify the work because they're all working in silos. And I think that really needs to change. So if there are any youths out there who are listening to this is the time where you need to start collaborating as opposed to I'm going to start my own thing and then, you know, sort of just do it alone. I think that's really important. We do have a question from the audience. And I think this is more for Professor Mahindran and Professor Dr. Jaffrey. And the question is from Zul. How can we utilize STIE to measure the outcomes and impact created from our work in community development, essentially having that as an impact measurement tool, which is something that I'm very interested in as well, because I'm in social entrepreneurship landscape and impact reporting and impact measurement is really, really difficult. Prof, maybe we can start with Professor Mahindran and then we'll go to Professor Dr. Jaffrey.
Yeah, so thank you very much. I think this is a very good point. I think one of the things, if you see in the model, the framework that we put in, not just 10-10 you have, but you also have the 8 I's. And each of those I's, you have metrics. You're able to actually measure where you are and where you want to be. And in terms of the adoption of technology or the adoption of skill sets and so on, it has to map to the output and outcomes. So as I showed in the case study, what were the outcomes? Their starting salary was 1,500, but clearly over 6 years, they moved up to 9,000, right? So you can work out the return on investment on what the 2,000 or 3,000 ringgit plus all your internet things, you can work out what the return on investment is. You can also measure return on value. What's the return on value? The return on value is essentially now you are creating new jobs, right? Because you are outsourcing, you are, your children are now, educated, they are building entrepreneurship. All these are measurable. At the end of the day, this is what we call return on value. That means that whatever you do, you're able to also capture both tangible and intangible effect. Ultimately, the intangible will lead to tangible, which is networking, clientele, markets, and ultimately it will lead to better, more cheaper resources and better revenue, market reach that will lead to the profitability. So there are clear metrics that one can put in depending on your own businesses and business environment. So clearly that is why we think that, we're developing a dashboard for that, for measuring the ecosystem and the state of development and the economic outcomes or return on value. The return on value is different from different. If you're a social business enterprise, it's different. If you're a profit, or if you're a micro business, it's different. So ultimately, you got to be sustainable and profitable. And I think that ties down to the return on value and return on investment.
I hear that, Professor Mahindran. Sustainability is very, very important, especially when you drive community development. I will pass to Professor Dr. Jaffrey.
Okay. I can talk about our experience by trying to improve the healthcare of poor stroke patients in the state of Terengganu and Kelantan, using the little gadget called a handphone, a kapcai handphone. So, when people are sick, they do not want to wait 3 months for us to look at the bar chart or the pie chart or whatever to see whether something is getting better or something is getting worse. They want it to be settled as soon as possible. So therefore, the feedback system in the software, that when we do something like we're taking care of B40 stroke patient in Kuala Krai or in poor parts of Kelantan, they are able to instantaneously tell us whether they are happy or not happy with the treatment we are advising them through the handphone, the videos that we are showing to them, and they can grade us daily so that the stock market goes up and down. And we have a geo-information system that we know that orang yang tak suka kita, kurang puas hati kita daripada which part of Kelantan. And then we can correlate where that poor man is, maybe mistreated by me or not well treated by me. Where is his closest hospital? Who is his closest general practitioner that he can go and see? Or mountain go to Muhammad, the GP or the people from that hospital goes to his house in somewhere in Ulu Kelantan or whatsoever. So the feedback that we have to make is, of course, software. So software has to be made simple, because the stroke patient will not press on the handphone. It will be the caregiver, it will be anak dia, it will be cucu dia. And when we see the outcome, whether they are happy with the videos that we train them to take care of themselves and the medication and medical advice, we will get a live impact daily. That requires, of course, to have a 24-hour man place, whether it's under Kementerian Kesihatan Malaysia or Hospital USM, for us to be able to do this and advise immediately. Right now, it's just like WhatsApp. It's just like a WhatsApp system. So we have to inculcate other information into that software that we are trying to do now. So that's my ideas about how we can utilize STIE to measure quick outcomes and quick impact. Good outcomes and bad outcomes, good impact and bad impact.
Got it. Thank you so much, Professor Dr. Jaffrey. I think it's important to measure both. I think given me as a social entrepreneur myself, we are very much focused on just assessing the positive impacts. There are times where we neglect sort of the negative impact that perhaps, that perhaps there is in an organization. What I am going to do now is just to make things a little bit more interactive, I must say. I am young, so I love interaction. I hope everyone loves it too. So I am looking for any perhaps participants who are keen to unmute themselves and speak to the panelists, the esteemed panelists. This is the time for you to speak up, ask questions, engage. They're all, reputable. This is the time to speak. So anyone from the audience would like to unmute themselves, and don't be shy because I'm here. I think I heard someone unmuting themselves, and then I think you muted yourself back because I was speaking.
Malu meow.
Kan.
Takut dia cakap dengan Dr. Jeffrey. Maybe while we wait for people to have the courage to come and speak about capacity development for non-profits so that we can do better in community development, right? So that's also another issue besides, measuring impact outcome and all that. The development of our non-profits or different social actors on the ground needs special attention as well. Unfortunately, some of our donor community, they really like to provide funding for barang-barang, benda that dia orang boleh nampak. But the funding to build capacity of the social actors to do better sometimes is a little bit lacking. It depends. Some donor community are more sophisticated, others are not. They give you 100 ringgit, they expect 100 ringgit to go directly into the community, but they forget that there are people in between, the social actors who, need a decent salary and all that to do the work. So there's a lot of engagement and education that needs to happen so that the donor community understand capacity development of social actors is very, very important.
I agree with your point. In fact, maybe just to share whilst waiting for someone to unmute themselves. Last year, Accelerate, we deployed a program with 43 stateless communities in Sabah to develop them into becoming entrepreneurs. And the funding actually came from American Chambers of Commerce. And I remember the first meeting I had, the question was, is there any food aid? Something that they can see, right? Something immediate. What is the immediate relief? So what I did, the strategy I used now that it worked before with Amcha, is I give them 2 reliefs. I said, this is the immediate relief that we are deploying to the community. We are providing 3 months monthly supply, so to say. But on top of that, there's also a long-term relief to make sure that once this food aid runs out, they don't go back to the vicious cycle of begging for food. And so I had the opportunity to actually discuss that with them. And I guess the education and the awareness came from that because now the funding aside for the organization goes towards, are there any immediate and long-term relief as well? There's a lot of work that needs to be done in terms of that. One, in fact, now there are a couple of organizations that come by to us and say, do you guys need any money for immediate relief? And then I keep telling them that we don't just provide immediate relief because then it won't be sustainable. Because at the end of the day, when we try to help the community, it's not a one-off help, food a month, and then they go back to where they are at. And then we're not moving forward. It's just a vicious cycle. And I think going back to what Dasri say, right, the poor just gets poorer and they just depend on essentially food aid. There's a lot of work that needs to be done there. Yes, I think Professor Mahindran would like to say something.
Yes, I know. I'm involved with this NGO that provides a computer for rural and poor children. We have 22,000 kids, almost 60 schools in Malaysia. And of course, CAPEX is one thing, buying the computers. That's what most donors want to do, is they want to buy the computer and see the computer and have a kind of a celebration. But I think a lot of, besides CAPEX, there's also a lot of OPEX, which is actually paying the tutors and paying all that. And that's a struggle to get this. And we do have good well wishes, but again, that's an area that capability development is critical. And if you don't have if you have the equipment, you don't have the capability, it's going to be difficult. So again, I think educating the big corporations and others to say that it's equally important. It's important for the sustainability of the program, and this is where educating them is really important. The donors too.
Agreed, Professor. I think what we are doing here is creating change. I'm sure a lot of those people who are hearing, seconds us in terms of that. I think Sharmila, you unmuted yourself. Hello.
Yeah. Hi, how are you? Thank you for inviting me to Professor Dr. Jaffrey. Actually, it's a very late night yesterday. Yeah, and then I'm so happy to see Prof. Mahindran and a lot of faces that are now looking into synergizing things towards the community development. So what we do now actually is also extra effort in building the community, especially on the sustainability through the innovation. So basically we have more programs, and then we like everyone to be participate in our programs. So the most current one, the one that I already shared about the wrong record, we are looking into the NGOs that are available at the community to be with us. And then because we know that the struggle is there, you need to pay your bills, of course. And then at the same time, we know that you have to carry one something like tangible things, says an innovation or product over there, so that you can be sustained. No need to do any crowd funding anymore, maybe, or you no need to beg to any industry for more on the same basis of things, but maybe more on the development of innovation for your community and by your community. So I welcome everyone actually to work with him, and I'm so happy that Yayasan Sejahtera is all the way over there, and surprisingly is also contributing a lot to the B40 and M40. So welcome to this STIE. And then in fact, under MOSTI, it is not only us. So we have Magic. Yeah, Magic is also a part of the ecosystem to be together. So let us synergize and collaborate. Thank you so much.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Let's start working from tomorrow. Even though it's a Sunday.
Okay, that's all. Okay, welcome.
Yes, I don't even know it's Sunday sometimes, you know, every day seems to be the same day at home. Perfect. Thank you so much, Sharmila. I think looking at the time, I shall wrap it up. Just I think to summarize the discussion today, there are two key points that I see that are most important for me to conclude. Number one is linking science, technology, innovation, and economics might not be as complex as we think. It is just about localizing our solutions to ensure they are able to resonate with the initiative. It's very important to always think about the community first, to think about the voices that are not in the room when we discuss topics that are related to them. And I think the second part, cannot help myself but to remind myself and the audience as to this, sustainability is definitely key, especially now more than ever. And it's important for us to reach out and collaborate with organizations. This is not the time to be selfish, not the time to be competitive. We've got to stop working in silos. And for that, actually, I am also offering anyone who are interested in youth unemployment initiatives, work with Accelerate. I'm here. Do connect with me on Instagram, on LinkedIn, or any other platforms there is in the world. And do connect with all the panelists as well, because they are more than welcome to collaborate with all of you. We are definitely stronger together. And before wrapping up, I guess I would like to maybe give the floor to Puan Shireen as the CEO of Yayasan Sejahtera to maybe give a few words to conclude the session today. Puan, passing the baton to you.
Thank you, Rauda. Thank you, Professor Dr. Jeffrey, Juan Dasri, Professor Mahindran, for spending your 2 hours on a Saturday afternoon with us. And I echo, what Rauda says, and the team is also now quite nervous because now we're going to collaborate with everybody. and Dr. Jeffrey, continue to be our mentor. Boleh. Happy to do that. And thank you so much for also the participants or the attendees who dialed in. We started with 43, we're at 41. So throughout, I think we had really, really good audience engagement, and thank you for your inputs and your guidance always. Over to Rauda and Fauzo to wrap up.
Yes, thank you so much, everyone, for being with us today. I love the energy in the room. Pao, back to you.
Hi, thank you, Rauda. Thank you. It was such an excellent session, I believe. Very engaging, as Puan Shireen said. And of course, I, for one, being part of Team Yayasan Sejahtera, not only nervous, but excited as well to be working with a lot of more advanced and sophisticated organizations and with better ideas, so that we can deliver a better development framework for the community. I believe everybody who are involved in community development, it's all for the community. It's all for the well-being of the community, and that could actually translate into the growth of our own nation. So with that, again, thank you so much. I've been Fauzul Hazwan from Yayasan Sejahtera. Thank you so much for your time and engagement to everyone, especially to the panelists and the audience. Thank you. Thank you so
Look
much.
out for our next webinar. You
Yeah.
want to do a bit of a promo before we close off?
Sure. Okay. Yeah, we're gonna have our next webinar in late July. There'll be one more in late July. We're gonna announce the date very soon. The topic will be the role of education institution in community development. So now that we've got this kind of theme going on, we're on a run. There's this momentum of collaboration. So we're gonna look at education institutions next and see their viewpoint of
We
how
can bring the two profs again.
You can,
Yeah, maybe.
I can suggest Dr. Zulkifli Mustafa, who has worked on the Honey Keluluk project and has gone to East Malaysia, masuk kampung, luar kampung, everywhere. He will be a fantastic person to talk down to earth about how universities help the community. Yes.
Yes,
please. Yep. Sure. Oh, that's a great input. We actually have a Madu Keluluk project happening at the moment in Sik Kedah.
Yeah.
Exciting things coming out from there.
Dr. Zul was my ex-PhD student, and now he's on his own and doing fantastic stuff.
Awesome.
We have, you know, I'm sure you are familiar with Mission 4.7 is Education for Sustainability under UN, SDSN.
Yep.
And we have at the university, Sunway University, we have a major program on education for sustainability. And this covers vulnerable groups, environmental governance, and so on. So, and we're working with ASM on this. So we're happy to collaborate on this.
And USM is #1 in terms of SDG in Malaysia.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, so please do not forget USM. USM.
All right, so not to forget, there might be some more burning questions from the audience that maybe they're too shy to ask here. You can head on to our Facebook page. Just type in Yayasan Sejahtera and you'll find us, and send in via the chat section any questions that you have regarding today or the coming sessions. Yeah. All right. So with that, I think we've come to an end. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Salam sejahtera.
Waalaikumsalam. Thank you very much. Thank you, Prof. Mahindran.
Thank you all.
Thank you, Thank you, everyone.
Dr. Jafri,
Faizul, Aris for the contributing slides.
Take good care.
Thank you all.
Okay.
Thank you. See you soon.
Bye.
Bye.